good evening, Crime Crunchies. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I am Courtney C. I am your host. We are Crime Crunchies, and you are my true crime hungry crunchies. As we get going, please remember to subscribe, like, comment, and share all that good stuff. As my phone is going off, I'm going to turn it off. Hopefully everybody's having a good evening. It is Monday, March 2nd. I can't believe it's March already. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's been 30 days. We have been watching for Nancy Guthrie for 30 days now. And, Saturday morning, I went live and I talked really in depth about kind of what I believe the scenario could have been had the Walmart Wrangler come upon Nancy's house as a burglary gone wrong. Okay. Now I've gone back and forth for a month now on what exactly this even is, because there are so many competing messages, signals. Was it a burglary gone wrong? Was it a kidnap for ransom? Was it an abduction? Okay. I've actually done some research on what the difference is between an abduction and a kidnap for ransom. And again, while I went in depth on Saturday about a potential burglary gone wrong scenario, I'm still going back and forth. And, listening to most folks, FBI specialists and whatnot, most people are saying that this was not a burglary gone wrong. They're still thinking that it was an abduction, but abduction is different from kidnap for ransom. The ransom notes, I don't know. I guess the FBI is still looking into the ransom notes that TMZ got and the news stations got. But again, there's so many competing messages. Sorry, I have allergies really bad right now. So many competing messages, but tonight I want to look into the difference between a kidnap for ransom and an abduction. Try to figure out what could possibly have been a motive. And making me think about what could be a motive leads me back to Savannah and her notoriety, being in the public eye, being a famous news anchor with the Today Show and her past. I'm going to dive into actually a couple cases of news anchors that are still technically unsolved to this day. So we're going to look at that. But today, probably the biggest news today is Brian Enton is saying that in the next few days that the Pima County Sheriff's Department should be hopefully getting some DNA back. Not exactly sure what pieces they're getting back, if it's the glove or if it's what DNA, but supposedly they're supposed to be getting DNA back in the coming days. But really the biggest thing today was the family has been given the house back. Nancy's house has been given back to the family, and they are seeing, I think Brian Enton may have got this for News Nation, but Savannah, Annie, and Tommaso are actually seen at the house for the first time visiting the memorial. So let me add that to the page here and let's take a look at that. Make myself smaller. This is heart-wrenching. I'm going to turn my sound up, and because you can hear, I think it's Annie, you can hear her very emotional, but we have Tommaso for the first time, and I'm glad to see him together because, again, the family has been officially cleared. They're double and tripling down on that. The family has been cleared. And while I even have looked at how the family could have been involved, I'm glad to see Tommaso coming out and supporting his wife and supporting Savannah. Let's take a look at this video. It was short. I'm going to play it again because you can hear. I think it's Annie. She looks very upset. Savannah looks like she's kind of got it held together, but I think going in the house and seeing the memorial, I'm going to play it again. Let me know if you guys can't hear the sound, because you can hear her. Come on, Mr. Mouse. All right, here we go. I mean, just awful. I can't even imagine what this family is going through. But um, this is with them even having processed this for a month, which is awful. So I wanted to look into tonight, what's the difference between a abduction and a kidnap for ransom? Because again, I was listening to Jennifer Coffin Daffer this morning, and she is going to talk about what she believes is the motive. But there's a difference between a kidnap for ransom, burglary, and abduction. So I did some research, and I pulled up some notes here, and I wanted to go through this for my own understanding. Okay, let me see if I can make this any bigger, because I know it's hard to read. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so when we're looking at this case, we really have three scenarios going on. It's a burglary gone wrong is the scenario I looked at on Saturday. We've got a kidnap for ransom, where a kidnapper nabs somebody and then communicates with the family with direct information, asking for money, keeps the victim alive and safe, and then returns the victim when they get paid. And then an abduction, which is, I guess, completely different. And so let's take a look at the notes that I pulled up. So when a case shifts from this looks like a burglary to this feels like an abduction, investigators start asking one giant question: what was the motive? Because burglary, ransom kidnapping, and targeted abduction live in very different psychological neighborhoods. Here are the main possibilities detectives usually explore in a case like Nancy Guthrie's. So personal targeting rather than property crime. Again, because we're still not convinced that anybody even took anything. So a burglary is about stuff. An abduction is about a person. If nothing of value was taken, or if entry seemed staged, that often suggests the intruder came for her, not her belongings, which is, I think, what people are really thinking. Possible motives: grievance or personal conflict, obsession or fixation, revenge, control, or intimidation. And this makes me go back to Savannah and her being a news anchor and having done interviews of the president, having done interviews about Jeffrey Epstein, having a potential job hosting the Olympics. So again, if this is an abduction targeted, this makes me think that this could be linked to Savannah Guthrie. Burglars avoid human interaction. Abductors are willing to risk it. That's a massive behavioral difference. Ransom kidnapping would look very different. Classic ransom cases usually include immediate contact, which we did not have here, specific financial demand, which we did, but then there was no way of getting in touch with the people, instructions for payment, which there was, proof of life, which there wasn't. If those elements are missing, investigators often start ruling ransom out. Why? Because ransom kidnappers want money, a quick transaction, minimal long-term risk, which is exactly what everybody had thought this whole time. So holding someone long-term increases exposure and risk of capture. In most modern ransom attempts, Contact happens quickly. Is there silence? That changes the theory. Okay, so again, comparing it to kidnap for ransom, this looks more like a targeted abduction. Staged burglary. Sometimes a scene is made to look like a break-in. Clues investigators examine: was entry forced from outside or staged from inside? Was anything actually stolen? Was the ransacking selective? Are valuables left behind? A staged burglary can be used to mislead law enforcement, delay suspicion, create a false narrative. When detectives suspect staging, the case shifts from opportunistic crime to intentional targeting. So again, even though I went into a deep dive on Saturday about a burglary gone wrong, I mean, I'm looking at this and it doesn't look like burglary gone wrong. Okay, emotional motive versus financial motive. Crimes driven by emotion often look chaotic, personal, and direct. Financial crimes usually follow a practical logic. So this makes me think it's definitely emotional. If someone abducted Nancy Guthrie instead of burglarizing, they may have wanted power over her. They may have known her. They may have had unresolved conflict. They may have been trying to silence her, but she's an 84-year-old woman. So again, it's just the competing messages. Nothing makes sense. Abductions are rarely random, agreed. They require planning, transportation, concealment, and risk tolerance. That suggests intent. So looking at an opportunistic predator, there is another possibility. Some offenders are not motivated by money at all. They are motivated by control, dominance, or fixation. In those cases, the victim is chosen. The location matters less than the person. Financial gain is irrelevant, which I agree with that. I don't know that this person wanted financial gain. These crimes tend to be deeply personal in execution, even if the relationship wasn't personal beforehand. So why not just rob the house? Because robbing the house does not achieve revenge, control, silence, emotional retaliation, psychological dominance. This makes me, again, think that it could be connected to somebody who maybe was obsessed with Savannah Guthrie, maybe thought that maybe they're not mentally well, or they thought that they were going to, maybe they thought they were in a relationship with Savannah Guthrie. I don't know. I still think that there's more than one person. So could this be a political attack on Savannah Guthrie? Is this somebody who, what could possibly be the problem so that there's one or more people coming to get an 84-year-old woman? I just can't think that this is just about Nancy Guthrie. I have to think that this still has to do with Savannah Guthrie. And then abduction definitely makes sense. So the silence factor in ransom cases, silence is unusual. In personal or targeted crimes, silence is common, which is what we've seen. That's one of the biggest dividing lines investigators analyze. So again, looking at this, I would have to say that abduction is about a person. If nothing of value was taken, which we think, or if entry seemed staged, I think the entry was definitely organized, that often suggests the intruder came for her and not for her belongings. We already know that her iPhone was left behind, the iWatch, and while those things aren't necessarily valuable, I can't imagine that somebody stealing may not have grabbed those as well, because they do have resale value. So the possible motives are grievance or personal conflict, obsession or fixation. If somebody had an obsession or fixation with Savannah Guthrie, and we're not sure that there was more than one. I think that it points to there's more than one, especially if Walmart Wrangler had a walkie-talkie in his pocket, then it makes me definitely think that there was more than one. Where was the car? Why take Nancy? And this goes back to one of my very, very beginning questions. If this is somebody fixated on Savannah Guthrie and they want to get back at her for some reason, why take the 84-year-old mother? Why not take the sister who can walk? I don't know. Control or intimidation. Burglars avoid human interaction. Abductors are willing to risk it. There are some people who have been pretty convinced that backpack, Walmart Wrangler's backpack, is full with like a tarp or a blanket or something to wrap her in, that they intended on using, because they also had that pew in the holster. Did they go in and intend on using the pew? So looking at fixation with Savannah Guthrie tonight and thinking about how somebody that is on the news and is a celebrity, is a beautiful woman, and somebody getting fixated on them, I actually wanted to take a look at some other cases that are unsolved that have to do with news anchors. And so I've put together a little slideshow here. And news anchors, dangers with notoriety. Okay. Some of these maybe you've heard of, some of them maybe you haven't. So anchors and stalkers, news anchors and stalkers. So there have been several cases involving television journalists that have included suspected stalkers. The nature of television creates a one-sided relationship. Viewers see anchors daily and may feel they know them personally. This false sense of familiarity can sometimes develop into obsession. Jill Dando's murder, Jill Dando is somebody who was famous in England, in the United Kingdom, that we're going to look at her case in this presentation. But Jill Dando's murder investigation explored the possibility of a stalker. Investigators also considered stalking in the Huisentruit, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Huisentruit case. I think it's a German name, Huisentruit. Sorry if I'm killing that name. Unfortunately, stalking behavior is not uncommon for television personalities. Local anchors, news anchors, TV anchors, often lack the security provided to national celebrities. Yeah, they don't have bodyguards, They live in ordinary neighborhoods, they follow predictable routines, and predators can study those routines. Absolutely. So let's look at Jody Huisentruit in Mason City, Iowa, June 27th, 1995. So this is one of the most famous unsolved disappearances involving a television journalist in the case of Jody Sue Huisentruit, a morning news anchor in Mason City, Iowa. On June 27th, 1995, Huisentruit vanished while leaving for work, and despite decades of investigation, her fate remains unknown. Never found her anything. At the time of her disappearance, Huisentruit was 27 years old and working for KIMT TV. She anchored the early morning news broadcast, which required her to arrive at the station before sunrise. At approximately 4:10 a.m., her producer called her apartment after she failed to arrive at the station. Huisentruit answered and said she had overslept but would be there soon. So she probably needed to be there by 4 a.m., and the producer called and she missed her alarm. So that conversation was the last confirmed contact anyone ever had with her. When Huisentruit still had not arrived by 7 a.m., coworkers contacted police. Officers went to her apartment complex and discovered what appeared to be the scene of a violent struggle. Her red Mazda Miata was still parked outside. Nearby, investigators found a hairdryer, high-heeled shoes, bent car keys, earrings, and drag marks on the pavement. And this was all outside near her car. And this is one of the things that we've talked about out front of Nancy Guthrie's home, because while there appears to be blood outside the front door, there are no drag marks. There's nothing other than the shrubbery that Walmart Wrangler put up to the camera. And again, nothing that we've heard about, no evidence that we've been told about has been located, but especially drag marks. And so that tells us, if there's no drag marks out front for Nancy Guthrie, that she was either carried, which is, was one of my theories, my speculations on my last podcast about a fireman's carry over the shoulder when they removed her from the home, or did she walk out on her own? Which I'm not sure what condition Nancy would have been in and how she would have gotten out of the house on their own. The sheriff has stated that pretty firmly, and he's been consistent at least once or twice, has mentioned that she was taken against her will from the home. So again, we don't know if we've seen all the video footage from the ring cam, the Nest cam. So again, Jody Huisentruit, by her car was a hairdryer. So maybe she had taken a shower, grabbed a hairdryer, and was heading to the TV station to finish doing her hair and makeup, which is probably common. Oops, I hit a button. High-heeled shoes, so she was probably carrying her shoes. Bent car keys, so what does that mean? How were her car keys bent? Which is, that's a lot of pressure. For car keys, that would be hard to bend. Earrings, so this tells me that Jody left the house, probably had taken a quick shower, took her shoes, her hairdryer, her earrings were in her hand. Don't know about the bent car keys, but drag marks on the pavement means somebody got her and drug her away. The evidence suggested Huisentruit had been attacked while unlocking her car. Investigators believe she fought fiercely before being abducted. Neighbors reported hearing a scream around 4:30 a.m., but no one witnessed the attack clearly, which makes sense. If her producer called her at 4:10 a.m., she probably jumped in the shower and was running out at 4:30. One neighbor reported seeing a white van in the area around the time of the abduction. Despite an extensive investigation, no one has been charged in connection with the disappearance. And again, if you're just joining me, I'm taking a look at two cases, unsolved cases of news anchors that were either, clearly targeted and unsolved. So June 27, 1995. So again, despite an extensive investigation, no one has been charged in connection with the disappearance. Some investigators believed a suspect named Jackson, the last name is Jackson, fit the profile of Huisentruit's attacker, but evidence linking him to the disappearance has never been established. Search warrants executed decades later indicate the investigation remains active. In 2001, Huisentruit was legally declared unalived. Her body has never been found. Her disappearance remains one of the most famous unsolved cases involving a television journalist in American history. And again, I'm taking a look at these because, my speculation today, my deep dive is on Nancy being abducted, specifically abducted in connection to something to do with Savannah Guthrie's fame. That's what I'm looking at today. So, of course, we've got a tip line here. I wanted to include an email if anybody does have any information, and a website, findjody.com. So the second one, I don't know if anyone, if anyone here has heard of Jill Dando. This is from London, England, back in 1999. If you've ever heard of Jill Dando, put a 1 in in the comments if you had heard of Jody Huisentruit, the Iowa news anchor that had been abducted, unsolved mystery. If you have heard of Jody, put a 2 in the comment box. So if you've heard of Jill Dando, put a 1 in the comment box. If you had heard of Jody Huisentruit, put a 2. And again, Jody's just beautiful. It's time for my Coke Zero. All right, so let's talk about Jill Dando. Okay, very famous. Jill Dando was on the level in England that I would easily say that Savannah Guthrie is. Jill Dando was a presenter for BBC News and the host of Crime Watch, a popular program that reconstructed unsolved crimes and encouraged viewers to provide tips. She actually had a boyfriend who at the time was in the business, and he was even concerned about her taking on Crime Watch just because of the fact that she was highlighting so many crimes. And just to talk a little bit about Jill Dando, she was definitely, I want to say America's sweetheart, but she was England's sweetheart. The haircut here, she supposedly got this haircut before Princess Diana got the haircut, and just was acclaimed. She was a presenter on so many shows. She hosted so many shows. She was just really famous, just like Savannah Guthrie. I mean, probably hosted the Olympics like Savannah Guthrie, had interviewed different notorious people all in the gamut, good to bad, just like Savannah Guthrie. So really on that level is Savannah Guthrie. So she was widely respected and admired across the United Kingdom. And again, supposedly had that haircut before Princess Diana did. So on April 26, 1999, Jill Dando was shot to unalived outside her home in Fulham, a district of southwest London. She was 37 years old. And she was actually going home. She wasn't even living there. She'd been living with her boyfriend at the time in another part of town and had literally pulled up, parked her car. She'd gone shopping earlier that day. She pulled up, she walks up to her house and was unalived. So that morning she returned from a trip and parked her car near her residence. As she approached her front door, a man walked up behind her. Witnesses later described the man as calm and purposeful, but he didn't stand out. So they didn't even really get a good witness account of who this person was. And sketches varied a lot about who this person was, but it was silent. He pulled out a pew-pew and fired a single shot into Dando's head at close range. The attack took only seconds. So the way her door is her front door where she was getting her keys out to unlock and walk into her flat was very close to the street. Like she parked her car. There's a little bit of a front, kind of not even really a courtyard area, but a short sidewalk from where she parked her car right up to her door. So this happened really quickly in broad daylight in the middle of London. The killer fled on foot and was never identified. The murder shocked Britain and led to one of the largest investigations in the history of the Metropolitan Police. More than 2,000 potential suspects were examined at the time. Police pursued multiple theories. And I feel like, you know, when I have been watching this thing with Nancy Guthrie, this case has gone through my mind many times because nobody could understand a motive. Jill Dando was loved, well respected, didn't have any enemies. I mean, her brother has come out. There was a documentary not too long ago that came out with her boyfriend and her brother. She was a genuinely nice person, just like Savannah is. Genuinely nice person. No reason for anybody to have had anything against her. And so this is one of those cases like Nancy Guthrie where people cannot figure out why this crime happened. who had what out for her and why it would even happen. So I think that this is the type of case. I certainly hope that, Nancy, it doesn't go like that. But as we kind of went going further on with Nancy Guthrie, I've really been thinking about this Jill Dando case because it's a head scratcher. It just doesn't make sense. So the investigators believed the unaliving had the characteristics of a professional hit because there was a silencer on the gun. And I don't know if, you see, this is what I don't get with Walmart Wrangler, because they were sophisticated. He was sophisticated enough and that he didn't have a cell phone, sophisticated enough and that he covered everything up and it looked like he'd done recon, sophisticated enough that is that a walkie-talkie in his pocket? Some people had suggested that Walmart Wrangler maybe had a scrambler of sorts. I'm not that familiar with what a scrambler is, but maybe a signal scrambler where people can't pick it up. But some FBI people that would know what a scrambler looks like has said, no, that looks like a walkie-talkie. And that is something that is generally used in, today's professional crime, burglaries and whatnot. So I don't want to say this is a professional hit on Nancy Guthrie, like they were talking about with the cartel before, because I don't think, from everything I've heard, that it was cartel. It doesn't line up with cartel. But again, head scratcher. The single shot execution suggested a trained killer. Others believed the crime might have been connected to Dando's work on Crime Watch. And I mean, it would make sense because Jill Dando was a host of Crime Watch. Savannah Guthrie is not a host of anything like that. But again, very public person. The program had featured numerous violent criminals, and investigators considered the possibility that one of them sought revenge. Savannah has interviewed people about Jeffrey Epstein. She interviewed, he's not Prince Andrew anymore, just Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is his name. She's interviewed Virginia, his victim, before with Jeffrey Epstein. Is that something that could have angered somebody? She has interviewed other people. Did somebody take offense at that? And again, competing messages, because if somebody is seeking revenge on Savannah Guthrie, why do them? I guess, why take the mother? Okay. Why not take the sister, who's easier to take care of than the mother? The only thing I can think of is that maybe taking the mother would be more painful for Savannah to go through, knowing that it's an 84-year-old mother. I mean, if you were going to seek revenge on a TV celebrity, what's going to hurt more? Taking the sister or taking the mother? And, obviously in this case, they took the mother, So again, tonight, I'm really just trying to dive into some of these other cases that have happened to TV celebrities to see if there are any similarities. And I actually think that this one with Jill Dando is the closest similarity to, Nancy Guthrie, with the connection to Savannah Guthrie. So another theory involved an obsessive fan, which again goes back to, it could be an obsessive fan. People who aren't well, we've all heard it, will watch somebody on a TV show and say, oh, they lifted their hand behind their ear. They're sending a message to me. She wore the blue top today. She's sending a message to me. She used these words in a row. She's sending a message to me. So you just don't know. Now, looking at the Walmart Wrangler, he looked really young. I don't know why he would, if he's a helper and who the architect is. is this political? Is there something political? I'm going to talk a little bit about, let me finish these bullet points, and then I'll talk to you a little bit more about what people thought with Jill Dando. Eventually, police arrested a local man named Barry George. George lived near Dando and had a history of unusual behavior. Barry George actually would insert himself in different cases. He liked the attention. He was one of those people that after this happened, he walked up to the reporter and inserted himself, and the reporter actually interviewed him. And that does happen a lot. You'll see if somebody famous is unalived, a lot of times the feds or FBI will go in plainclothes to the memorial and take a look at people who show up, because it's very common for people who do this to show up and watch the reaction. It's very common for them to give interviews, like, oh my gosh, it's my neighbor. I can't believe this happened. And Barry George was one of those people, but he actually had nothing to do with this at all. He was just really weird. George lived near Dando and had a history of unusual behavior. He was convicted of unaliving in 2001 based largely on microscopic firearm residue evidence. However, the case was controversial from the beginning. Many observers believe the evidence was insufficient. I think that he got arrested because at a certain point in something like this that goes on for years, the police have a lot of pressure to solve this stuff. And this is back before really DNA took off. And I feel like they arrested Barry George because he stood out, and they needed to do something with this case. I think that they had egg on their face. After a series of appeals, George's conviction was overturned. He was acquitted in 2008. Dando's unaliving remains unsolved to this day, but there was actually somebody from, I want to say, I don't know if it was someone from Serbia, that they thought that this was another country who had done this, not like a terrorist attack, but that somebody from another country, like an intelligence thing, that they had gone after her. But even after all this time, they couldn't get enough evidence on anybody. There just were no witnesses. They didn't have cameras back then. There was no DNA left behind at the scene. It literally was so quick that she walked from her car about 20 feet to her front door, was unlocking the door. Someone just quickly walked up behind her with the silencer, pew, pew, and it was done. And nobody could figure out a motive. Nobody was ever really assigned this. So again, knowing this story about Jill Dando, being England's sweetheart, it really makes me think of Savannah Guthrie, because Jill Dando was just as famous as Savannah Guthrie. All right, so patterns across the cases. When examined together, these cases reveal several recurring themes. And I mean, again, I am speculating like crazy because I am grasping, trying to figure out why this whole thing happened. So predictable schedules. Morning anchors often leave home before sunrise. This creates vulnerability. Jody Huisentruit disappeared while heading to work in darkness. Predictability allows offenders to plan attacks. They probably obviously have been watching Nancy Guthrie. They knew she would be home 2 a.m. That's an easy one. Public visibility. Television journalists are highly recognizable. Viewers know their faces and names. Sometimes they also know where they live. Visibility increases risk. And I think that this is one of those situations where just last year, Savannah went home and she did an episode for the Today Show where she had lunch with her mother and her sister and talked about what it was like growing up in Tucson and working at the TV station for her first job. And it's one of those situations where I'm sure Savannah has guilt, because what if she hadn't done that segment? What if she hadn't had lunch with her mother and had her mother go on TV? She's had her mother on the Today Show several times, actually, as we can see from the different pictures. Her mom has been on the Today Show and different cooking segments, Mother's Day specials. But just last year, Savannah had that segment where she had lunch in Tucson with her sister and her mom. So again, if this is a stalker or someone fixated with Savannah, then, this absolutely tracks that, again, looking at the mother being abducted rather than kidnapped for ransom, rather than a burglary gone wrong, but a targeted abduction to get back at Savannah. And again, this is all speculation, but since Saturday I went into the burglary gone wrong scenario, today I'm going into the targeted abduction as revenge against Savannah theory, okay? So accessibility, unlike celebrities, local TV anchors live ordinary lives. They lack bodyguards or gated communities. They often walk alone to their cars. This accessibility makes them easier targets. Obsession. Some cases involve suspected stalkers or obsessed viewers. Television creates the illusion of intimacy. This can lead to dangerous fixation. So all of the above. The psychological impact, murders or red rooms and disappearances involving TV anchors have a unique impact. These are people audiences trust. They appear calm and authoritative. They help viewers understand frightening events. When anchors become victims, it disrupts that sense of stability. It reminds viewers that violence can reach anyone, even the person delivering the news. And it's odd because if you watch any documentary on Jill Dando, there's actually a scene where she's the host of Crime Watch, which is kind of like 2020 or Dateline, where they go through either solved or unsolved crimes. And Jill Dando has a young girl with her, and the girl is asking Jill Dando, can these things actually happen to us? And Jill Dando says, oh no, these things are so rare, they'll never happen to you. And of course it happens to Jill Dando, one of the biggest unsolved crimes in UK history. So it's really ironic that Jill Dando had hosted Crime Watch and ends up being interviewed by a child and is reassuring her that, no, this is so rare, it could never happen to you. And then it does. Several of these crimes remain unsolved decades later. Without witnesses or strong forensic evidence, investigations stall. And, that's what we're afraid of here is, what forensic evidence are they able to grab? And again, as I mentioned in the beginning, Brian Enton has mentioned that they could be getting some DNA back. I'm not sure what DNA objects there should be getting back this week, but hopefully something comes back. And I think the glove, if it's the glove that was found on the road, I think that's a nothing burger. Time will tell. We'll see. I hope that it does yield something, but we'll see. So time erodes memories and evidence. Justice becomes harder to achieve. All right. So that is my little thing I put together talking about some news anchors that came to my mind when thinking about, why somebody could go after Nancy as revenge of Savannah. And, going back to my notes of, thinking about in this case, the three different theories, again, is kidnap for ransom, targeted abduction, which is different from kidnap for ransom, or burglary gone wrong. And just looking at my notes, it feels like more of an abduction. Personal targeting rather than property crime. A burglary is about stuff. An abduction is about a person. If nothing of value was taken, which we don't think, or if entry seemed staged, that often suggests the intruder came for her, not her belongings. Possible motives, grievance or personal conflict, obsession or fixation, revenge, control or intimidation. So again, my speculation tonight is how could this have happened in connection with Savannah Guthrie? Just because I can't imagine that a team of people is going to go after Nancy Guthrie. It just seems so weird, and nothing makes sense. So I know we've got people that are just joining. I want to show the video again of the family. They went to the house today, and this is a really hard video to watch, but I wanted to, let me make it bigger. This is from today. I think Brian Enton filmed this for News Nation, and you can see Tommaso is here, and they are showing some solidarity together. Not turn that off. Boop. Okay. The pair, along with Annie's husband, Tommaso Cioni, paid their visit as investigators are still searching for the tip that breaks the case open. They left a note to their mother at the site. It reads, "Mama, we miss you so much. Our hearts are broken. We are standing on ash on scored earth. But Mom, though we are surrounded by so much darkness and uncertainty, our love burns bright. We love you, Mommy. We miss you so much, our best friend." Updates in the investigation were slow over the weekend. The Pima County Sheriff's Office confirmed to News Nation last week that authorities were aware of Ring camera footage taken from a house 2.5 miles or a 7-minute drive from Guthrie, showing about a dozen cars driving by in the early morning hours the day she went missing. And I spent a lot of time on my last video. If you guys didn't, if you haven't watched it, my last video on Saturday, I really do a deep dive into the theory of a burglary gone wrong. Today, I'm looking at a targeted abduction. So here's some pictures, some still photos. It's just beautiful. They've got the beautiful flowers. And I can't imagine that. I don't know. I don't know if Savannah's going to go back to work, because I have to imagine that she feels, and it's not her fault. It is not her fault at all. She couldn't have stopped this, but I can't imagine that she doesn't wonder if she hadn't done that segment last year on the Today Show, with her mom and her sister, if something like this wouldn't have happened. Oh, here's the card that they left. "Mama, we miss you so much. Our hearts are broken. We are standing on ash, on scorched," see, they said scored earth, scorched earth. "We are standing on ash on scorched earth. But Mom, though we are," can't read this, "surrounded by so much darkness and uncertainty, our love burns bright. We love you, Mommy. We miss you so much, our best friend." It looks like Annie, Tommaso, and Savannah. Yeah, I'm sure that these poor people are gonna, if they're not in therapy, they're gonna need a lot of therapy to get through this. Just the fear. They probably haven't slept a full night in a month. They probably haven't eaten regularly in a month. The anxiety. But, a lot of the people that, I'm watching so many different shows. I'm looking for any clue as to why this has happened. And so far, most of the people that have a law enforcement background are saying this is not going to go cold. They've, even though the FBI agents have left the Tucson area. They have a big office in Phoenix, big, beautiful office in Phoenix. They've gone back to their office. It's actually not a bad thing because they've got network systems that they can utilize. They have more equipment at their office in Phoenix, and they can continue working and searching. I don't think that there's anything going to come from the ransom notes that TMZ has gotten, because there hasn't been any consistency. There hasn't been any way for the family to communicate back to the kidnappers. So again, most of my research today is pointing to targeted abduction as a grievance or personal conflict, obsession or fixation, revenge or control or intimidation. And this goes back to a possible someone fixated or seeking revenge on Savannah. Or, I don't know. There could be something going on. You have to do the victimology. I don't know what they found out with the victimology. The sheriff's office would have started with that. They would have sat down with all the family and said, okay, who was Nancy arguing with? They would have looked at every single family member and said, who do you have a problem with? Who do you have a problem with? Who do you have a problem? Where do you go? Who are the people in the house? Has Nancy argued with the housekeeper? Has she had a problem? Has she not paid a bill? That's part of the victimology. They would have done that. So if there was, revenge or someone getting back that isn't related to Savannah Guthrie, that would have come out in the victimology, that they would have sat down with the family, and like the very first day they would have sat down and they would have taken everybody separately in a different room and gone through everything that they know about Nancy, and then they would start branching out. Who's in your life? Savannah, do you have Savannah? Have you been getting any emails of somebody, a fan? Do you have an overzealous fan that you keep hearing from? Do you get gifts from a fan? Is it the same fan? Have you ever reported a stalker? And so I know that the victimology would have been done immediately. Those first few days they would have, but it takes time. I mean, people have to really think. You have to really think about, every little thing. Because if somebody's not well, somebody's wanting revenge, somebody's obsessed, somebody is fixated, it could be the smallest thing. You have no idea. This memorial is so pretty. And then here's the card that they left. I think that it's nice that they showed up, and I do appreciate that Tommaso has appeared, because I've even been one of the ones that was looking at family. Again, Occam's razor, and they've clearly cleared him, which is good. I'm glad that he's finally coming out, because I think that that's going to help people finally drop the accusations that he had anything to do with it. I think that this helps, having him out there out front and visiting the memorial with them. Cameron, as the brother, maybe he had to go back to Ohio. But, I'll play the video again since we've had some people just show up. Let me do this. So again, if you're just joining me, Tonight, I'm taking a dive into, you know, here's so tonight I'm taking a dive into, there are three elements that could have caused this. They're all competing. None of them match up 100% with what they could be. And again, the first one is burglary gone wrong, which I really took a dive into on Saturday. And I've gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And Saturday, I'm convinced, okay, this is a burglary gone wrong. But then listening to other people and then doing some research into abduction, targeted abduction, which is different from kidnap for ransom. And then, of course, burglary gone wrong, kidnap for ransom, and then abduction. So if they didn't steal, and I've read all the comments. I had a lot of people commenting Saturday after I had that live where I really looked into burglary gone wrong, that whole theme. A lot of people were like, well, they didn't take anything. Looked like there could be blankets in the backpack. If there's more than one person, it's organized. So without knowing what the nexus of this whole thing is, we just want answers. All right, I'll take that off. So if you're just joining, if you want to go back, I did do a dive. I did a presentation about a couple other news anchors that are unsolved cases, because news anchors, people don't think about it, but news anchors, they get people obsessed and stalking them. And there are some really widely known news anchor unsolved mysteries that are 20, 30 years old now. And it can happen. If this is linked to Savannah Guthrie, I'm still just trying to figure out a motive. So if anybody has an idea of what a possible motive could be, please let me know what you think it is, because, we're all in this together and we're all really smart people. True crimers are really smart. They're logical. We're critical thinkers. And, my mind is completely open to anything at this point. And just hoping, I don't think it's going to go cold from what everybody's saying. We all just want to, get some answers here quickly. But if you think you have any ideas of what the motive could be, please share it in the comments. I really appreciate everybody showing up. And this is a new channel, so please make sure that you subscribe, like, comment, share. It really helps the algorithm. I am going to be at CrimeCon in Vegas. So if anybody is planning on going to CrimeCon, just let me know. I can't wait to see all the other content creators and do all the fun workshops. I really am appreciating everybody. I really am appreciating seeing everybody's comments and hearing from everybody. I know we all care about Nancy. We all want to see this come to some conclusion and really just have closure for the family. So I appreciate everybody joining me tonight. Again, please subscribe, please like, please comment. It's Crime Crunchies. Woohoo! I will be back soon with more live content. Until then, I am Courtney C., and I hope y'all have a great evening. Take care.